When seasonal storms strike, whether it's a spring tornado, a summer flood, a fall hurricane, they don't hit homes that are always in pristine condition. Many properties across the country are aging with roofs, windows, foundations, and drainage systems that have quietly, slowly deteriorated over time. That slow wear and tear becomes a serious issue when extreme weather arrives. In today's program, we're speaking with a disaster restoration expert to explore the critical intersection of seasonal weather events and the realities of aging homes. So it's my pleasure to welcome Ben Gergis to the program. Ben is with DRYmedic Restoration Services. Pleasure to have you on today.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate your time today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Before we get into our topic, talk about your company and yourself a bit. What do you do?
Sure. So I am one of the co-founders at DRYmedic Restoration Services. We started back in 2014 in a city called Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, just outside of Detroit metro area. Started there, had a life of a background of construction, home inspections, and then went into the restoration business as well as multiple retail companies and franchise type of businesses. So very familiar with business and understanding structures and buildings and licensed in the state of Michigan as well as the state of Florida, IICRC true and through all the way. Uh, Training and also with OSHA certified and asbestos certified. So seen quite a bit of houses and quite a bit of commercial buildings. When disaster strikes, we come in and clean it all up.
Our topic is seasonal weather and aging homes. Not every home that is hit by a storm is going to be new or pristine or in good condition. There's all kinds of issues with homes as this country ages, as we see weather getting worse as well. And in your years, I'm sure you've noticed that the weather's just, it's not getting better.
Right. No, and the weather creates a lot of stress on our buildings, a lot of stress on our infrastructure. Just thinking about this topic, it reminded me of a time when we were getting started in the business in 2014, 2015, and 16. There was events we never even heard of before. Things, terms like a polar vortex. Like, who's thought of that, or where did that name come from? And then we had, we never had flooding before, right? My favorite the term I hear all the time is it's never flooded before, right? And we're seeing that in low-lying areas and heavier rains, and then the infrastructure. Whoever knew that you had such massive pumps that were moving the water away from our streets and our communities, and when those pumps fail, they cause massive backups inside of people's homes and buildings. And as age hits these pumps and age hits these infrastructure, things are going to fall apart.
Let's dig into the challenge of this, Ben. Talk about the how does the age and condition of a home impact the severity of damage after a storm hits? We're getting close to hurricane season. We're seeing tornadoes across the country. Talk about what you're seeing out there now. Are there
You
common
know,
warning signs to look for?
there's just so many, and then there's absolutely no warning, right? So I feel like in a lot of cases, if you look at aging homes, I seem to be on the side of the coin. Like a home built in the 60s and 70s seemed to do a little bit better than a home built in the 90s and 2000s in some respect. You look at some building materials that are used today, a lot of glue, a lot of pieced together or sandwiched together, things like OSB paneling. They don't really hold up well when a weather storm comes through and a roof gets some wind damage, and then some wind-driven rain falls into those crevices and cracks of that OSB. It swells it out, and it creates all kinds of havoc on buildings. And then you have the other side of it, where in a home they didn't understand, built in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s, where ventilation wasn't as big as we know it today. And then you start to see massive things like attic stain molds and problems with the roof sheathing separating from heat. So it's really interesting to see the dynamic of how code changes affect and building materials change, and how we use them in the real world. And what's really, really unique to see now also is because of these events and how much weather we're getting. Some of the new construction buildings, wood is not dried 100% to a dry standard before we sheetrock them. And then you're seeing houses getting that are open to the elements during a heavy rain and windstorm, and builders are not understanding the severity of that and swelling and understanding of what's happening to the building materials after it's framed and it just got hit with a plummet of water. So you see all these factor into play, and you got to think of things like almost like a sponge, right? So as things get wet, it expands, and then as it dries out, it shrinks. Well, that's happening to our houses, and it's happening to the ground around us, and it's happening to all that. So that constant movement is creating a lot of different challenges, and we see it, especially in plumbing, right? There's a lot of separation with pipework because of that.
Ben, how does it work when you're working in let's say a storm comes through a town. It's a big storm. It hits one neighborhood that's an older neighborhood, aging homes. It also hits one a mile away that's a newer development. You're doing homes in both of them. What does that mean with dealing with insurance and pricing for those two different types of jobs? Is that a concern?
Honestly, it depends on your market and where you are, right? So we're a national brand, so we have over 60 locations across the country right now, pretty rapidly growing. And I'll be honest, you don't see too much of a variance neighborhood to neighborhood. You see more of that in state to state, or really if you go county by county, you start to see a little bit of that when it comes to pricing. Now, when it comes to dealing with the structure, they have their nuances by state. But whether it's built in the 60s or built in the 2000s, you generally have the same materials, but what you have to look for is hazards. So the big deal is hazards, right? So if I have a neighborhood in the 60s, I'm looking for lead, I'm looking for asbestos, I'm looking to make sure my team is protected. But in a home built in 2000s, some of that stuff is still there. So you always got to keep an active eye looking out for that type of danger, more so than different building material or material styles.
Anything restoration contractors can do now before storms hit to prepare to to deal with this challenge.
Absolutely. Education. Educate your staff, get them ready. We like to think that we are always ready for when a storm arrives and when it hits. But the fact of the matter is, you're dealing with people and people's lives at the same time. So, having a good, built up core value of how you do business, right? Getting your guys properly trained, understand how many hours is comfortable for your team to work, making sure that your staff is ready for those storms. So, today we just spoke before we started the recording. It's raining. It's dismal. It's nasty. Last week it was 75 degrees. Today it's 45 degrees. I don't even understand it anymore, right? And it's raining. Well, these are the downtimes when it's raining and it's a little cold. Give those teams a break. Let them get a chance to rest, because tomorrow the phones are going to go off the hinges and we're going to be busy. And you got to be prepared for that. And second to that, I think it's very important for any restoration contractor when you think about dealing with storms, is you have to be prepared for the unexpected. So to do that is you got to have life and safety first and foremost, right? So making sure your teams have enough PPE to weather a storm, making sure that they have enough drinking water. Some food supplies are always helpful too in our industry, because guys are going to work 12, 16-hour days. There's not going to be a lot of services for food available. So having those types of mindset of, being ready, almost like you're going camping, right? So if you think about that, what you need to go to a good camp trip for a couple of days, very helpful in a time of a storm. And you got to think about the occupants too, you know, bottled water for our occupants, having different dried snacks for them. Just they're going through a lot, and you got to have compassion and help carry them through that storm too. It's not just about the house. It's about the people.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And that's my closing point here for you, Ben. When you're thinking about those you serve, those homeowners, what do you do to help them appreciate this whole issue? Their home is aging. It's not going to be that easy to repair. The type of structure they have be replaced with modern. That
Right.
does happen, I imagine. What do you do about that?
It's all about communication, right? So setting expectation in advance, understanding and communicating what is important to the client, right? I went through a fire personally, and I've been on this side of the business for a lot of years. And being on the side of it when you have a fire and you're enduring that with a family, you get a little different perspective, right? So things that really matter to you as a contractor don't necessarily line up with what the client is facing. a prime example of that would be a client that may have gone through a water loss and their basement flooded. If you have basements in your market, you understand that. A lot of stored items, family history, family heirlooms. Those are what matter, right? So, getting the carpet right and the paint, sure, that's later, but that initial thing is communicate, ask questions. Hey, is there anything in your building right now that cannot be replaced by money, right? Like an insurance company can give you X amount of dollars, it doesn't matter. A great fun fact, I had a client that had a fire. And during the fire, the fire department went out, had us come board up the building. And I looked at the guy, and they were really shaken and really upset as they're sitting on the curb. And I asked him, I looked him square in the face, said, "Listen, is there anything in that house that you need today to help carry you on?" And out of nowhere in my mind, I heard, and from what I heard from the wife was, my kid, I'm a college professor, and my kids just took their final exam, and the laptop has all of that information. I need that laptop. And then the husband said, I have a ring from a championship in college, and it was right by my bedside, and that ring is as important as my wedding ring. And we went in, we got those items, we cleaned them, and we brought them back to them in 48 hours. And I'll tell you what, the amount of positivity that came from that and compassion that we shown to them and they were showing to us, it was just the whole project became very easy because they knew we were looking out for their interest and not chasing the dollar. We're chasing the success to help people, and that was the difference.
What a great story. I imagine you didn't charge for that.
Not at all, because it's part of what we do, right?
Yeah.
So you can't approach these jobs thinking dollar signs. You
Mhm.
gotta think about, how am I gonna serve that client? How am I gonna take care of them? What if that was me? What if that was my aunt or uncle that just had that happen to you? My mother, my father. If you put that in your mindset, you're going to be super successful in restoration. But if you're chasing that dollar and you want every line item, and I'm going to fight the insurance carrier to the death on that line item, dude, please find a different industry to work in. We don't want you around,
Yeah.
you know?
What you're talking about, Ben, is empathy. And if you have that as part of your core being as a business owner, as a technician, everyone in the company, if they have that empathy, that's going to translate to the ones we're serving. So great story. Thank you for sharing that. And today's topic was great. You're not, those watching this are not going to always be cleaning in 5-year-old homes. They could be 50 years old, and the challenges are going to be there for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And listen, anytime you're looking at a challenge, it's just another learning opportunity. Take your time, understand what you're dealing with, work safely, and communicate. Bring in professionals to help you. Bring in third parties to walk you through it. If you don't know, it's okay. Ask, 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 ask.